Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoy here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. October 26th, Oklahoma will be headed to Oxford, Mississippi, a game that Oklahoma fans have had, I think, circled for quite some time since this SEC schedule was released. We welcome in Zach Berry from omspirit.com. Zach, thanks for joining us. I would imagine right now the expectations for Lane Kiffin, and it was very surprising to me, I guess surprising, but I can't believe he's already been down there for 5 years, coming off of a program record, 11 wins. I would imagine right now a lot of Ole Miss fans feel like this is the moment. This is the time that they get over the hill.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, again, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. This is fun. Talking Ole Miss, Oklahoma. You said that Oklahoma fans have had it circled. Some might have had it circled since 1999 because it's the only time
Yeah.
these two have ever played.
Deuce
Um,
McAllister.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the players on the team and Kiffin have dubbed it the last dance, as they got a big group of dudes to stay, come back, and try to make a run at this. But yeah, I mean, it's all hands on deck. It's pretty indicative of the run that Ole Miss did in the portal. That this is the year. It's been circled as 2024 if Jackson Dart comes back, if Jared Ivey, JJ Pegues, Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins, all these guys are there, and we can add some defensive talent, then why not us kind of thing for Ole Miss.
Zach, take us through, I think the narrative around Ole Miss, you mentioned it, all the guys coming back, but also the job they did in the transfer portal, getting some of the top guys to come to Ole Miss. Who are some of these guys, and how big of an impact do you think that will have on their season?
Yeah, I think, you have to start up front defensively with what they did landing Walter Nolan, Princely Umami-Ellen. Those two, that's some cachet right there. I mean, Umami-Ellen was Florida's best edge guy, and Walter Nolan, former number one overall player in the country. I start there. Those are the big two, and then you have to talk about Henry Parrish and Rashad Amos and Logan Diggs at running back. We all know Quinshon Judkins now up in Columbus at Ohio State, so they had to find a way to replace a lot of production and a lot of talent, and they put it together with Henry Parrish coming back to Ole Miss after being at Miami for a couple years. They get Rashad Amos, who was going to go to Mississippi State. He was going to go to Colorado. They land him. And then Logan Diggs is interesting. Outside of Jaden Daniels, he was the leading rusher for LSU last year. He had some injuries. He had a little kind of knee surgery cleanup type thing, so he probably won't be available until SEC play. But because of getting those two other running backs, they won't have to rush him. Outside of those names, I think the biggest up front on the offensive side, you get two offensive linemen from Washington. Joe Moore, award-winning offensive line, best in the country, got Washington to the national championship. Julius Buello and Nate Kalipo are monsters. They're Coke machines, as I call them, out there in cleats. I mean, they're humongous people. And then you put those two with a guy from Southern Miss. It's somebody that has played a lot of football. He's experienced. He's also multiple. They can move him around. I think that's crucial because they also bring back several starters, several contributors from last year. So at times in 2023, offensive line was a bit of a weakness. I think Jackson Dart bailed out Ole Miss a lot, being able to move and create plays that, when protection broke down, he kind of hid that a little bit. And then Diego Pounds, I mean, great name for an offensive lineman,
Absolutely.
another massive human that's just going to give them a lot of options up front. And then looking on the defensive side, I mean, it's kind of hard to really dumb this down or keep it quick because of so many transfers. But they get Pooh Paul, Arkansas's leading tackler from a year ago. They land Isaiah Hamilton from Houston. They get Trey Amos, a guy that I don't think gets talked about enough. He came in the SEC championship game and shut down Brock Bowers in that one. The easiest scouting report for Trey Amos is, look, Nick Saban thought he was good enough to play corner, so there you go. Yeah, a lot of transfers, and I mean, kind of, I'm leaving guys out. Yam
Sure.
Banks is a guy that played a lot at South Alabama, could have gone pro. He opted to come back to Mississippi to play for Ole Miss. So yeah, a lot of names we could go through. I'm leaving people out, but it's a talented group.
One name that will not be left out is obviously Jackson Dart at quarterback, and matching him with Lane Kiffin, I think it's there. We've seen it. Him coming back though, I'm interested. Is he the type of guy that, or do Ole Miss fans look at him as like, this is a Heisman Trophy candidate? This is a guy that can lead this team to the national championship. Is that level of elite, or is that what we're talking about when we're talking about Jackson Dart?
I think so. I don't think it's too far-fetched. It's
Yeah,
kind of uncharted territory for Ole Miss at this point to be considered a college football playoff contender. They won 11 games a year ago, but it's kind of always Ole Miss fans expect, all right, where's the but in this sentence? Or, when's something bad's going to happen, that kind of thing. But no, I mean, this is a legitimate college football playoff contender. I know the field being expanded to 12 helps that. But yeah, Dart being in year three is huge for Ole Miss. I did a piece last year about jumps that year two guys in Lane Kiffin's system take. Matt Barkley at SC had a phenomenal year in year two with Kiffin. Chris Robeson at FAU. You guys are familiar with Robeson.
yeah.
He had a monster year for FAU when they won a ton. And then Matt Corral at Ole Miss worked really well in his second year with Lane Kiffin, put up some huge numbers. Dart did the same thing in year two, and now in year three, it's kind of uncharted territory for college football these days. A lot of quarterbacks don't stick around for 3 years, unless you're playing in Utah with Cam Rising,
Sure.
where he's there for 7 years. But yeah, Dart being back, I think is the pivotal piece. I was talking with our friends over at KSR, and they asked me, who's the guy that has to step up this year? It's Jackson Dart. It's quarterback league. He's the guy. He's the trigger man. He's got to take care of the football. He did a great job last year of that. Down the stretch, especially, I think showed a lot of maturity in the offense where he wasn't trying to do too much. Kind of had that gunslinger kind of reputation early on in his career. He really toned that down and used his legs and a lot of check downs, didn't force too many balls. So yeah, Heisman, sure. I don't see why not. He's an experienced dude. He knows the offense well, and there is no quarterback competition cloud anymore. I know last year with Spencer Sanders that was a narrative that was never the case, but now it's his team. He's got the keys.
Zach, on the other side of the ball, Pete Golding, it was a year ago that Ole Miss hired him, obviously from Alabama. What's the perception of him right now in Oxford? And what's the confidence level that you mentioned all the guys they got in the transfer portal? It feels like if the pieces connect, and that's a big if, but if they do, it could be one of the best defenses in the country.
I think so. Last year, top 30 SP plus
Yep.
defense. A year before that, they were pretty bad. Kind of a boomer bust. Bend but don't break. All the cliches of defenses, but they really stepped up late in the year. So it's at the Peach Bowl. I know Penn State's not some offensive juggernaut, but they had some things that were working early on with the run game, and they were working the tight ends, and they were finding holes. Ole Miss quickly made some adjustments in the second half, just put the clamps down on him. But yeah, I think he's going to have an embarrassment of riches over there with talent up front. I mentioned the transfers, but you got Jared Ivey back, who had 5.5 sacks a year ago. JJ Pegues is a big part of that not only the locker room but that defense. He's a versatile guy. And then I mentioned Pooh Paul, Kari Coleman, a guy from TCU, is back. They've got TJ Dudley now for a full year. He was an eligible all last year after transferring late from Clemson. And then I think the secondary could battle with the defensive line for being the strength of the defense. Ton of experience. That's kind of been Golding's MO when going in the portal, is we want to get guys that have played a lot of ball. And I mentioned Amos, Isaiah Hamilton. They got John Saunders to come back. I mentioned Yam Banks. I mean, they've got Louis Moore from Indiana that's played a lot of ball. I mean, it's a old defense, and again, going back to the Last Dance thing, where they're loading up to try to make this run and make it happen this year.
Is Key Lawrence going to play at all? I have to ask that.
Yeah.
I almost forget that Key Lawrence transferred
Yeah.
to Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think him and Brandon Turnage still that narrative that angle of experienced guys that they know they can trust that are going to be able to learn the playbook. And yeah, absolutely. Both Turnage and Lawrence are guys that I think will be in that rotation, because at times Golding will play 5 defensive backs and they have no problem running dudes out there. And it's kind of like hockey where they got line shifts where they're going to rotate a ton. So yeah, I think Key Lawrence will be a key part of that defense, because y'all know how the portal is. These guys, first of all, they want to get paid. They want to go somewhere and get NIL. But when it's your last year or it's a draft year, you want to go somewhere where you're going to play. You're not just going somewhere just to go. So yeah, I mean, Lawrence is a guy that probably had some options in the portal, and he chose Ole Miss for a reason. I think the comfortability with Golding and how multiple they can be. I think he saw an opportunity where, hey, there's 5 spots out there. I can try to grab one. So yeah, I think Key Lawrence will be in the mix as well, for sure.
I think in all of these preview shows that we've done with almost everybody that we've talked to, and Oklahoma fans have looked at the schedule, and there's a lot of quote unquote swing games. How does the how does the Ole Miss's schedule set up? It comes after a bye week. Oklahoma's trip down to Oxford comes after a bye week after they play LSU. In terms of swing games, where would the Oklahoma game be for Ole Miss? And what are some of those games that Ole Miss fans are looking at that go, all right, if you get through this one, you could really make this a special season?
Yeah, Oklahoma is definitely one that I think Ole Miss fans have circled, just because of, I think, the improvement in the defense, just another year with Venables, and he knows defense, he knows ball. I think the thing that makes this game so intriguing and so fun is Jackson Arnold.
Sure.
First year as a starter, had showed some flashes for sure, but then had some struggles as a young guy normally does. But I mean, he's going to be the guy, and he's got all the talent and then some. So could be a shootout. That's probably the biggest one. Georgia is obviously going to be circled because it's Georgia.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss got whipped a year ago, and they're going to want to get that taste out of their mouth. And that was kind of the game where, like, Kiffin finally was like, all right, enough's enough. We have to figure out the front 7, because they just got embarrassed in that game. I would say Oklahoma, Georgia, and then definitely LSU. I don't think many people realize Ole Miss hasn't won in Baton Rouge since 2008. So it's been a minute, and got them last year in one of the games of the year, but now it's no Jaden Daniels, no Brian Thomas, no Malik Neighbors. Logan Diggs now plays for Ole Miss. So that's one that I think is probably those 3, and maybe that's a no duh, because those are basically the 3 biggest ones on the schedule, because you don't have Alabama, you don't have Auburn, but yeah, the Oklahoma game. And then if you wanted like a bonus one, I would say South Carolina on the road. I think that's a game where Ole Miss kind of has to just kind of put their helmet down on the field and say, we're better. This is a game that we should win, and should win handily. South Carolina is going to have a lot of new faces, but Williams-Brice is a tough place to play. And that's kind of where I think Ole Miss will learn a lot about itself is, okay, we want to go from being a pretender to a contender. Let's see if we're about it. Let's go on the road. Let's win an SEC game the way that a college football playoff contender should. Those 4 right there, they're kind of all jumbled together. Georgia's in November, but yeah, that stretch in late September and into October is going to be pivotal for Ole Miss.
Zach, just kind of a big picture question for you. With OU and Texas entering the league, just what's the thought process from Ole Miss fans and the Ole Miss program, just those 2 entering? I know, like you said, OU and Ole Miss don't have a ton of history, obviously, playing each other, and they don't often recruit against each other. I know they've had some portal battles, even going back to, I know they were interested in Jackson Dart when he first transferred. But what's just the feeling, I guess, between Ole Miss and how they feel about Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, off the bat, I mean, initially when it became official, I'm sure everybody in the softball world was just like, well, shit, because
Yeah.
Oklahoma and Texas softball is no joke, as you guys know. But yeah, football wise, recruiting first and foremost, two juggernauts in recruiting. Um, Texas and Oklahoma are marquee names. I know our buddy Andy Staples did the blue blood kind of test. I mean, Oklahoma and Texas are both up there in the blue blood conversation, in my opinion. Um, yeah, I mean it's got to be recruiting. That's the lifeblood of college football, and that's got to be the biggest concern for Ole Miss is you now have to battle them, but also they're in your conference now. I think that's probably the biggest thing, and then just looking at a big picture. I mean, with baseball, I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be tough. Texas now, just the Schlossnagle thing was wild. That totally blew me away.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming. And then Oklahoma, I mean, Ole Miss had to beat Oklahoma in the national championship series in Omaha to get it done. And, I think Oklahoma is going to be extremely competitive in that space. They've been like that for as long as I can remember. And then now being in the SEC is just going to amplify it because, it just means more, as you guys know. But, the SEC is kind of they carry the torch for college baseball these days. But, yeah, I mean, all sports, basketball. I mean, basketball is a huge deal at Ole Miss now with Chris Beard. They're trying to build that culture and to be a serious basketball program and to compete on a national level. And Oklahoma and Texas are going to make that extremely difficult. Football, though, that's first and foremost. That's the big concern. Recruiting and then just having to play these two blue blood programs year in, year out is going to be pretty difficult no matter who you are, no matter who's on your roster.
I would imagine if the fan support is anything like what Ole Miss threw out in 2022 in Omaha, the atmosphere on October 26th is going to be just as electric, if not even more. For Oklahoma fans that are headed down to Oxford, obviously you got to start with the Grove, but what are some things just around town that they could get into? I've heard legends of chicken on a stick that I'm very, very interested in. At the gas station there. But what are some things that Oklahoma fans can get into before the game, even though it's an 11 a.m. game? I know that Oklahoma fans have bitched and complained in the Big 12 about 11 a.m. games for so long. I think this was the one that everybody was hoping wasn't going to be 11 a.m. or noon, but
yeah,
here it is. What are some things that people can do down in Oxford?
Yeah, this is like the diehard, kind of gif here, like welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah.
I mean, Ole Miss has been complaining about 11 a.m. kicks for years. That actually can kind of work in a fan's favor where, hey, the game's early, it's over, whether you win or lose, you're going to have the rest of the day to do stuff. If you're coming in town early, I would say go check out Roanoke, William Faulkner's place. It's really cool. It's just right off of campus. And then you can't go wrong with food. I mean, you can just kind of walk around the square and you're going to run into some kind of James Beard Michelin star chef. But yeah, I mean, just the Grove for sure. I mean, that's one thing. It lives up to the hype. It's not going to disappoint. And I think Ole Miss fans, like most fans do that have a legit tailgating scene, if you just come in and they're gonna want to welcome you in. Like, hey, where are you from? You're an Oklahoma fan, obviously. Like, where are you from? Come in here, grab a plate, grab a drink. That's probably the biggest part of game day at Ole Miss. And then I would say, yeah, go to the square. Kind of off the square too. There's some really good spots. Everybody knows about Big Bad Breakfast. That's just a little bit further down North Lamar. Go check that out. You got to go early because the line's going to be long. But then, I mean, you can run into a good spot anywhere. If you like kind of upscale American fare, you can go check out Snack Bar. If you like Greek food, Volta is one of my favorites. It's in an old gas station. Phenomenal food there. Margaritas are good. And then, yeah, just walking around the square and just enjoying a nice small town. They call it a snow globe town, picturesque square, old courthouse and all of that. But yeah, I mean, I think Ole Miss fans do a nice job of being, they want people to come to Oxford and see it. Ole Miss people, Oxford people are very proud of it. And yeah, they're going to want you to have a great time. And if you'll allow them, they will facilitate it and make sure you have a good time.
We were told the same thing about the folks from Baton Rouge. We'll see. We'll see on that one. Zach, we appreciate it. Zach Berry, omspirit.com. We appreciate it, and we'll be looking forward to the visit down to Oxford on October 26th.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach.